So Savannah is a really old city. I think it's a beautiful city, especially the historical district. It's right on the river. It's pretty preserved. You got all the old houses, all the old, converted, hotels. I forget what they probably were in the old days. And they've got kind of like a real character to all the restaurants, and they've got brew pubs and all that. So you can really kind of soak it all in there. I mean, the ghost tour, I thought it was okay, but I think New Orleans has a better one. But here's just a little bit of what I saw. Like, I took the tour, I listened to it, and here's some of the stuff I saw as I walked around the following day. So you get kind of a brief overview of Savannah. The largest unit of soldiers of the African descent who fought in the American Revolution was the brave Les Chaussures Volontaires du Saint Dominican from Haiti. It came from Haiti? This regiment consisted of freedmen who volunteered to campaign to capture Savannah from the British. Campaign to capture Savannah from the British in 1779. Their sacrifice, blah 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 blah. Battles of the drummer represents young Henry. Okay. All over 500 sailed from the Dominican, modern Haiti. Soldiers of African descent left their families to participate in the Georgia campaign under a French commander. Oh, that's right. Haiti was a French colony, which will have an uprising during Napoleon. And Napoleon, because of that, Napoleon decides to sell because he was thinking about invading the Americas. And without Haiti, it would cost him too much to take back Haiti because he was at war with the British. Okay. Here I am at one of the many parks that are in Savannah. This is named for Robert Johnson, a governor. I guess he was a mayor of Savannah. Might have mayor. This is a sundial that's in the shade. This makes a lot of sense. So Savannah's full of a lot of this. This is for a governor. During the Southern Tour of 1791, President Washington attended the service of Christ Church, Savannah, Washington lodged at the house, blah, 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 blah. Where he dined with Catherine Green, widow of Nathaniel Green, Mulberry Grove. And a fountain. And it's raining. And if you don't know, Georgia's kind of known to be a little wet and pretty rainy. Christ Church, Episcopal Church, that was the first house of worship established and founded in Georgia. Early realtors, Reverend Wesley, blah, 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 blah. Filter. I mean, these parks are quite lovely. At another nice square in Savannah. As you can see, it's a lovely Savannah day. This is John Wesley, who lived to be 88. He's the founder of Methodism, minister of the Church of England in Savannah. Founder of Methodism. On the Trust to South, across the street immediately went to us here, blah, 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 Bible, Bible, Bible. Okay. Trinity. Okay. It's right across from, apparently this is a famous Lucas ice cream. They say people line up, huge line for ice cream. Doubt there's going to be too many people up for ice cream today since, well, actually the showers are kind of supposed to stop, so. These are nice. I forget what they call these trees. It's cool how they just hang over the street really well. mean, obviously this is in the historic district, which is right by the river, the Savannah River, which is obviously where the city gets its name. So here I am at Ogeloff, or something like that. This is a guy who helped found Savannah and Georgia. He was a general, and I think he was a general, and back in whenever King George II gave him the commission to start it, he came here and there was an Indian chief. I don't know, Maui something or other. It's hard to remember all these names. And they came up with a treaty in order to found the colony. Now, originally the colony was supposed to be a buffer between South Carolina and Florida, because the Spanish had Florida, England had South Carolina, and they wanted a military buffer. This park here was used for filming of The Garden of Good and Evil, I believe. I believe that's where it started. Now, I have to confess, I've never seen that movie. I've never seen The Garden of Good and Evil. So, also another famous movie that was filmed in Savannah, I don't think here, was the Forrest Gump. The famous place where he was sitting on the bench waiting for the bus was done in Savannah at one of these parks. I forget which one. And they actually changed the direction of the street so that the buses would have the doors on the correct side, even though the doors don't open that way. Those kind of trolleys. You can jump on them if you pay like $40 for the ticket. There's like 15 stops. Tell you the history, all of Savannah. So, look at this walkway. Look at this road. This is so cool. Yeah, that's the founder of Savannah. One of the founders of Savannah. Ooh, yeah, whatever it is. Look at all these trees and things. You're like, there's nothing like having a covered, a covered roadway. And Savannah's growing. Look at the construction going on. Yeah, let's walk down here. Savannah Police Department. Whew, that's a real old 1953. Well, this is the Savannah Graveyard cemetery. Now, one of the important things here, when Sherman in his march to the sea, he ended at Savannah, and he camped his cavalry here, and I guess they did a ton of damage. That had to be redone. I guess there's a couple like famous people who are buried here. Civil War General McIntosh. I think it's McIntosh. And then another one was one of the 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence who came from Georgia. They're in here. Funny thing is, I think they told me that they're actually buried next to each other. They're buried next to each other, and McIntosh shot and killed the other guy. Yeah, that's the opening to the cemetery. Personally, I'm not a big cemetery fan. The Daughters of the Revolution. Not to be confused with the Daughters of the Confederacy. Completely different group. Ooh, big bell. That wasn't on the tour, so sure it has some kind of historical significance, just nothing right now. I mean, I've ridden down these streets, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's actually one of the few cities that I would say is actually enjoyable to be in on a motorcycle, because you got a lot of shade, very historic. So, hey, and you're right near everything. The only thing is that parking, well, it can be done, but you're going to pay. It sucks that you have to pay, though. But they accept credit cards now. At the commemorative to Monument Square of James Edward Ogeloff. That's his name. He's the philanthropist who founded Georgia in 1733. Now, him and the Indian guy founded it, and I think it was actually this square where they did the Forrest Gump scene. I think they moved one of the benches to the road, and I think he ran down that road. I think. Hard to tell. They all look. A lot of them look similar, and you hit so many of them when you do the tour. It's hard to remember which one's which, unless you were recording it, which I wasn't, and wishing that it was on this map, which it isn't. We're at another park, and they're talking about General Sherman and his march to the sea. Now, unlike Atlanta, where he burned it to the ground, Savannah, he only selectively burned stuff that had to do with military production. He left most of the stuff alone. And here they have a statue commemorating stuff. This is Mason Square. Those who mortally wounded rescued colors of his regiment on the assault by the British lines. Oh, Revolutionary War. Now, I'm not going to really kind of go to a bunch of these, but if you continue up that way, there's a monument to the Confederate dead during the Civil War. You go up far enough, yeah, they have then that was erected like 10 years after the Civil War ended, to the fallen soldiers, which I'm surprised that nobody's tried to, like, well, probably somebody's tried to take it down. Let's see here. Over there somewhere there's a thing. Okay, the other founder of Savannah was a Indian chief. I forget what his name was. And when he died, he was buried in that square. Years later, someone who was a mayor, state senator, and real like wealthy person ended up buying it, tearing it down, and building a monument to himself. And they said that he didn't know what it was for. Which I think is kind of funny. He probably knew what it was for. Didn't think there'd be like a public upcry when they found out that he did that. And so he put another monument to him. The Indian chief in question, I think, is buried a little over there in another one of these parks. I mean, he's not buried, but his monument's over there. Where his actual grave is happens to be a monument to someone else. Scottish Rite and Freemasons. So, some other things about Savannah. They have a long history of being involved in the slave trade. The largest slave auction actually occurred nearby Savannah. There's no way of getting around it. So, Savannah has a very mixed and very colorful history. They talk about Sherman. Is that Savannah was really good at burning down itself. So, like, I think in the late 1890s, there was a fire that burned down like 2/3 of the city, and even before Sherman got here, there was a big fire that burned down like 1/3 of the city. So Savannah burns down its own city versus allowing conquering armies to do it. So next stop, the Riverside, because that's where a lot of fun, and this is where Sherman's headquarters were, where he set up. And there's a church. There is a church here where Sherman spoke after, I think where Sherman spoke after the assassination of Lincoln. And in that same church, Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech, and he was so in demand, he agreed to come back the next day and give another one. And it was some version of the I Have a Dream speech. Yeah, that's the church up there. That's the church where Sherman spoke at and Martin Luther King spoke at. They say when Martin Luther King showed up to speak, the line was way outside to the point where people couldn't hear him, and that convinced him enough to come back and do it again. I couldn't find out whether or not both speeches he gave were the same speech or he made a new one, because I think he was known kind of like most of his speeches were off. While he would write down a speech, many of his speeches he would kind of like just riff off the top of his head. It was really important, like the I Have a Dream speech was actually written down, I believe. Church. You can see it Red Bill. Sherman was there. It's old church. I think it's originally a black church. I don't know. I don't know this stuff too well. But they have a coffee shop, and I want coffee. There's a nice little park right at the end of pretty much the river walk. And up there's a hotel, obviously. Morel Park, named after someone, Morel. Statue to a woman and dog. Damn it. And you can see the Savannah River. There's a bunch of cruises. You can take a cruise tour of Savannah. I mean, mainly it's a nice little shipping port. Ironclads and gunboats of the Savannah River. USS Atlanta and Union Service, James River. Confederates, States of America, Savannah. Georgia Moore extractions. Yep. A lot happened here. Savannah was a very important port to the south. But there was a Union blockade, obviously, trying to blockade stuff, and you would have a lot of ships trying to break the blockade, and the British especially. The British built special ships meant for speed to try and outrun the Union. Savannah Harbor Expansion Project. Huh. Deepening the harbor, that means you can bring in bigger ships. Because it's only like 40 to 47 feet deep. But that's not that deep, depending on the size of the ship. Very easy for a ship to, like large enough ship to scrape the bottom, which obviously is bad from the ship's point of view. So, all right. Right along the river. Those trolleys go like every 15 minutes, so you see them all the time. Now that's a lot of little parks in the historical district of Savannah. As you can see, there is a real rich and deep history there. You know, they have the Prohibition Museum, they got that really funky Oddities Museum. There's other museums there, and you know, taking the ghost tour, taking the food. I like the gumbo. I like a lot of this barbecue. This stuff is a lot better than anything you find up north. But Savannah, I love it. It's a great city, and one day I'll probably come back because I just really enjoy this city.